Hi everyone, welcome to another video looking at the gameplay in the game Order and Opportunity. So we've moved to round 3 and we are once again playing the Russians, or Russian turn, starting with the development. Let's see what we get. Okay, so this is one of the Czech cards. There are 4 altogether in the deck, and they will always be reshuffled back into the deck as well. And it's a check looking at the terror threat level, which is recorded for each power in their so-called home space. So for Russia, for instance, the home space is here on the map, the green space here. For China, it's the red one, and so on. And we can see here Russia indeed has one level of terror threat as recorded by that marker, so we need to resolve the check. For the non-players, just for the record, such as the EU here, they never gain these terror threat markers, so they don't have to worry about that, but I do. So how do you resolve a terror threat check? Well, it's a simple die roll check. You need to roll higher than the level of your terror threat. So I would need to roll 2 or higher on 1d6 to make this check. And I have the option of spending resources before the roll for a die roll modifier. So it's +1 to the die roll for each resource that I spend. And now, if we zoom back out, we can see I have got -1 resource, so I'm in debt. The debt check, there is such a thing as well. A debt check. The debt check card has already been played, so I don't need to worry about that as such. Although I do need to climb back out of debt again. How do you earn resources? Well, after the 4th round of play, so we're currently in the 3rd round. After the 4th round, we go into the globalization phase, and there you earn resources according to how many economic influence pieces and alignments you've placed on the map. We can view this here on the Russian player mat. So I'm earning just 1 resource at the moment, which is not very good. So yeah, I do need to look at and keep an eye on the resource situation. So let's say we're just gonna roll the die without any resource spending and hope for the best. That the stakes are high. I might lose, if I fail the check, I might lose a victory point. But I remember I have the agenda point markers. I can discard one of them instead of losing a VP, so I'm safe in that sense, although APs are valuable as well. Anyway, so let's go and roll. I roll the white die and we get A5. So that's a clear pass. So I set the check card aside and we continue. Opportunity. I did set the Russians up for resolving this emerging markets in the Eastern Europe space. So I grabbed that marker, drag it onto the Russian playmat, and then we need to draw a replacement. We get the EU. We get 1 EU opportunity. Right. So and then we move on to the command phase. So now I get to nominate a suit, and having just resolved 1 opportunity that I hold on my player mat, I could potentially even play a 2nd set. So, but yeah, so we've got 2 security action cards, and then otherwise just 1 card of each of the other suits. So let's play these. I think I already know what I want to do with these. So the plan from the previous turn, you might remember from a previous video, was to challenge this NATO military influence here in Eastern Europe. The challenge itself, or contest as we call it, will take place during the globalization phase, so not quite yet, but we need to build up for that purpose. Another thing that I could do is, since I now fulfill the conditions for resolving the crisis in Ukraine, or this world event in Ukraine, I've got, after all, sufficient economic influence in the space. I could use these cards and simply discard them to resolve this world event. I would earn 2 economic APs. But I'm going to not do this, since I want to now make use of the opportunity to get my military influence in place there. So let's use these cards not for the event effects, but for placing military influence. Let's talk a little bit in this connection about selecting spaces for when you're taking actions. So generally, you can select a space for taking actions for the if you're already present there. So that's as a general rule. So basically, Eastern Europe with Russian economic influence there, we qualify easily. Then other thing to pay attention to are these, what you might call labels here, that signal adjacency of further away spaces to other spaces. So Russia is also adjacent to the Balkans. So even though I don't have any presence in there, I could place influence into the Balkans. And then special case for the military influence. There are two special rules that you have to take into account. The first is that when the authoritarian powers, so Russia and China, are placing military influence, they need to control the space in which they are placing, in addition to having presence and the rest of it. So, and that is the case here in Eastern Europe. Control means that I have more influence than the space's stability value, which is 2 here. The white space indicates that, and the black number. So I have more, so I control the space, and at the same time nobody else is blocking my control. So if somebody had also 3 levels of influence there, then they would be considered to block me, and therefore I would not have control. But I do have control, and therefore I may place military influence there. The second aspect to think about when you're placing military influence is what's the status of your military influence track on the player mat. So here it's not very visible in this version of the player mat. I need to change this back. So basically the first influence, military influence, that is piece that the Russians can place onto the map, has to go into Russia itself or an adjacent space. Well, that is also the case with Eastern Europe. So let's just travel over here and place into Ukraine, which is adjacent to Russia, to the Russian Federation. And before I forget, I need to pay the space selection cost, which is 1 resource. And after each time you've taken an action, you need to see if anyone's able to react. And the reaction cards are here for Europe, in which I took the action. But we see here the Chinese, they react to economic and political action, and the Russians as well. You can react to your own actions as well. But since this was a military action, no reaction is possible. Right, so that was the first of the 2 cards that we played, and we've got a second one, so we use that to increase the military influence immediately there. I already paid the space selection cost, so that is, in that respect, a free move. And of course, there's always one thing that you almost forget, which is the consequences. So for playing 2 security action cards, you need to apply the consequences. And this should always take place immediately when you reveal the cards. But so the consequence for the military actions is to reduce your world order contribution by 1. So that's what we've done. We don't hit the penalty level just yet, so we are okay. That's the Russian first command, so to speak. And let's think about if we want to make use of that opportunity, but probably not. We will, since there's only 1 card that I could play, so it's suboptimal, so I might as well save the opportunity for a later turn. So let's discard the played cards and proceed to the plan step. And here I'm gonna grab a card. I'm thinking of taking this one here. This allows me to pass a check without having to roll a die, so that's always a useful card. So let's discard this to the Russian discard pile in order to have it available. And then the last thing remaining to do is to discard any cards that I still hold in my hand to make space for additional ones. and then to refill to 5 hands. So our draw deck is actually empty, so I need to return all cards to the draw deck, and then I can draw up to 2 cards more. At any point, the rule is you can inspect the cards you have in your draw deck to see what's coming. So I can see I've got 3 security action cards, I've got 1, 2 economic, 2, it's pretty even, you know, I've got 2 or 3 of most other suits. So I'm not gonna discard anything from my hand and just sort of draw and see what we get. So let's take 2 random cards, and okay, so it looks like we've got a big political action round coming next. All right, so that's the Russian turn. We ended, and next up will be the Chinese in the next video.